Welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, the podcast that cuts through the rubbish to explore the world of neurodiversity. I'm your host, Nick King.
And I'm your host, Kate Fox. And together we're here to explore, understand, and celebrate being neurodivergent in a neurotypical world. From ADHD and autism to dyslexia and other quirky brains, we talk about it all.
And go off on tangents. So whether you're neurodivergent, love someone who is, or you're just curious about neurodivergent minds, you are in the right place.
Let's get ready to juggle some words and maybe even a few chainsaws, metaphorically, of course. Hello and welcome to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws, that I introduce more regularly now that I can actually say the title of our podcast very well. I do find it a bit of a tongue twister. I am Kate Fox. She is Nick King. And we're going to talk about very grand emotions today, inspired by an article on the Neuroclastic website, which I do recommend for interesting takes on neurodivergent stuff, and a particular article about how justice in particular and mercy and truth, these very big emotions, even though they're usually seen as abstract concepts rather than feelings, can, for neurodivergent people, be driving very grand emotions. I'm going to read a quote first from that article. While watching a documentary about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was the former Supreme Court judge, hero to many people in America, I had an epiphany. She said, justice and mercy, they're very grand emotions. And it hit me that, to me, those are two of my deepest felt emotions: justice, equality, fairness, mercy, long-suffering, work, passion, knowledge, and above all else, truth. Those are my primary emotions. Now, for me, that really resonates. And when I look out at the world of autistic and ADHD activists, I see a lot of us being hyper motivated by justice and truth. I think for me, truth with a big capital T, I have often identified that as a prime motivator, and as it's a feeling, it's a pervasive feeling. Does that make sense to you, Nick? How would you kind of respond to that?
I love how you avoided asking me if I had feelings there for a second. You almost did it, didn't you?
I did.
Almost asked Nick if I had feelings.
Really did.
Almost. Very close. I think I do have a very strong sense of justice. I think I have a very strong sense of social justice, very specifically. I have very strong, maybe we could go with feelings. Maybe I do have very strong feelings about concepts of truth. I definitely have very strong feelings about lying and being lied to. It's interesting though, isn't it? That's framed within us. It's like a diagnostic thing that we have a strong sense of social justice.
Exactly, almost as if, that could be a deficit as opposed to a positive thing.
Yeah. How is that a deficit? How is it a deficit? How is mercy a deficit?
Exactly. It's only a deficit in a society which sees these things as an inconvenience when they're held as values above all, even though some societies actually do technically hold them as values above all. I mean, I like the idea that, okay, you think of somebody like Greta Thunberg or Chris Packham, who are autistic activists who are really known for their particular, like publicly known for their social justice work and battling for justice, and are known as autistic. And I think lots of people are totally on board with them, aren't they, and admire what they're doing. And yet they both obviously also attract a lot of resistance, which can be focused around kind of the idea that they go too far, do too much, or from people who are kind of on the opposing side of whatever it is they're opposing, like kind of hunt people against Chris Packham, or, people who are cruel to animals. So we have that. But what is also particularly intriguing to me is that they can be seen as emotions, very grand emotions, because I think humans or societies generally still have quite narrow ideas of what acceptable feelings are. And actually, feelings, the concepts of our feelings are socially constructed. And again, like autism itself, you cannot like poke inside somebody's brain or pancreas and go, oh, I've just seen a molecule of happiness there. Like, it's not a thing. And there's not one brain, body, verbal, linguistic, emotional configuration that actually signifies happiness. It's a mixture of kind of inner perceived stuff, outer conveyed stuff, and social relational stuff. This is getting a bit abstract, but what I'm saying is basically flipping heck, yeah, truth in itself as a very grand emotion. I'll take that. And it's a definitely, yeah, also a motivating factor for me as well.
A lot of people don't like truth, though, do they? So if we're thinking, actually, I'm going to regret not Googling her name before the podcast for
Beta
information viewers
Ginsburg. Yeah.
that names are rubbish. The Christian preacher that stood in front of Trump not long after his
Oh,
election and
sorry.
talked
Yes.
about mercy, her.
Marion something. Yes.
Her. And that conversation about mercy and things within Christianity and justice and fear and I definitely remember the word mercy coming up a lot. And you could see that Trump and JD Vance and other people in the audience were obviously sitting very uncomfortably and having feelings about that, which they then went on to communicate and called her a horrific woman and that she was all the bad things under the sun. But actually, what she was doing was preaching some very basic Christian messages around mercy and social inclusion and social justice. And she was literally hung out to dry um, almost immediately after because she wasn't talking about the narrative that they want to talk about. And this is where I get confused with these things because people have different concepts of truth and fairness. And because they are socially constructed in their entirety, there isn't, I mean, we could sit and probably look up a different dictionary definition of mercy or truth or things like that, but the lived reality of feeling it or experiencing it is a very, very different thing, and it's complicated and it's confusing, and I struggle with it a lot, actually.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought her up, actually. Yeah, what a brilliant example. Marianne Edgar Budd, who's a bishop, and is definitely sitting in a very similar bracket to Ruth Bader Ginsburg for me there as a woman making a very clear appeal along those lines of those allegedly abstract principles in a way that I would have thought was impossible to disagree with because so clearly right.
Yes.
Much as much as I'm like, oh yeah, postmodernism, there are multiple truths. Hang on, this one's not negotiable. The fact that she yeah called for um mercy towards scared individuals, including gay, lesbian, and transgender children in democratic, republican, and independent families, as well as towards immigrants and those fleeing war and persecution. And it's interesting.
And shouldn't we just be showing, yeah, mercy to people?
Yeah.
But maybe, and this is something that I hate to admit because I would never like to say that Simon Baron-Cohen is right ever, but I am aware that my thinking is black and white, even for people in our community. I do have quite a very this way, that way thought pattern that I often have to disagree with myself within before I even.
Oh, yeah. No, I get that. Exactly. Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Because really, you're like, no, nuance is good. Apparently, nuance is good. Remember, nuance is good. But really,
But
in your
really, you're wrong.
being, exactly. And
And
yeah.
I'm right.
But because I don't want to really read Trump's words, but he managed to call the service that she conducted boring. Don't really,
I
and
mean, we're still talking about it months later, so clearly not.
yeah, and the she owed the public an apology and described her tone as nasty. It's like, but you've literally got a person embodying all that's good in front of you. But of course, this is Star Wars, and it's good versus evil in its kind of obvious which side is which. Surely, no, sorry, nuance. No, there's no cause for nuance there. Um,
The
was
thing
it
is, that we're trying really hard for nuance, and I'm not sure other people in society are.
No, true. But perhaps we're because we're aware of our tendency to not have nuance and how nuance is generally. But yeah, yeah. So what are we?
A strong sense of social justice came up in my diagnostic thing because I do have a very, very strong sense of justice and right and wrong, and but it's also very clearly like hereditary as well, in that like I can think of many situations where my mother and my paternal grandmother went on small missions because like a decision was wrong. I can remember my mother going to the big tribunal at the DWP because there was meant to be some sort of, I mean, this is a long time ago now, an in-depth payout for your spouses for their funeral, if you were like in a care home at the time. And my grandfather didn't get it because my grandmother had donated her body to medical science. So therefore the DWP was like, well, it wasn't a funeral because you didn't have a body.
Oh,
And my mother went. Like she just like and kept going and kept going and kept going until she was in front of a judge. And it was never about the money. It was about a sense of justice and that they were wrong.
yes, yes, yes. So and they're being wrong. That's for me comes into both justice and truth. Again, it's that intertwined. And what happened in the end?
Oh, in the end, she won, and there was a change for however long that lasted. Because I don't know now because I don't have any very elderly people in my life. But I would imagine nobody's getting a payout for anything these days. At a random guess.
Yeah. Oh, good for them though. And it is often. I mean, so whistleblowers in work situations, I think, are often autistic
Yes.
slash otherwise neurodivergent, and they will put the value of truth and justice above their own well-being, above their how they're going to get on, above whether they have a job and actually are going to be okay, above whether people are going to pillory them. That comes above all those things. And yes, I can I've probably told the story before of when I worked for a radio station and you were able to put questions in a box and they were daft, dumb, or dangerous questions. And I thought, why would we put questions in a box? We should ask openly. And because I was furious that so many of my colleagues were being treated really, really badly by really inconsiderate bosses at the time. So I asked the question, what are you going to do about morale being so low? Which was the equivalent in that setting of just lobbing a little grenade into the room. And I was partly able to do that because of well, this is the right thing to do. And also partly maybe a little bit of not quite fully knowing what the impact would be and how you just don't do that. And if I had known, I wouldn't have cared. But then not knowing was quite helpful, if you know what I mean. Like I think
Yes.
more people having instilled in them this sense of well, you might feel privately that something is wrong, but that doesn't mean you have to speak up. But that's the other thing. If your commitment to truth is such, you are going to feel possibly that you have to speak up.
Hello, lovely listener. Are you
enjoying the podcast. If you would like to support us, you can leave a tip via the PayPal link on our website at www.neurotypicals.jugglechainsaws.co.uk. And every little bit will help us keep the show going, and we will truly appreciate it.
And how much effort and spoons you're willing to do and put into it.
Yeah,
I
I
see a
can.
lot of it in parents, particularly because obviously there are laws around education and, accessibility and Disability Act and COP and all sorts. And I see a lot of parents who are like, but it's not legal and they should be doing this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I know, but how many spoons are you going to spend on trying to make them do that?
Oh, yeah. So there's the kind of double whammy of often it's parents of neurodivergent kids who are having to fight, and often they're neurodivergent. So often these very grand emotions are motivating them as well as wanting the best for their kids. Yes. Ooh, and I can see how that can lead to.
Burnout and a framing, like definitely a framing of people being difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas it's it's the double empathy problem fundamentally,
Yes, yes, because they're actually motivated by these higher things, and a lot of people are sort of
not.
no, or at least won't prioritize that over other things. I think I've just been kind of held back from unleashing. To cut a long story short, I have an ongoing issue where I have tw twice been caught without insurance, but really it was just once because it was accidental. And then the issue, the administrative issue that I thought had caused the first time, for which I actually appeared in court, it wasn't the administrative issue I thought it was, which meant, ironically, when I drove to court that time, I was still uninsured even then. Anyway, not great. I'm not. I no longer have a vehicle because I can't bear the admin, and also I've got two frozen shoulders. Anyway, it's a long story. But right, when I got stopped by the police the second time, um, they were asking me many administrative questions, and I was saying, I can't immediately answer these. I do have a support worker. I'm autistic. I can't give you the answers. I'll look on my phone, but I can't do it now. And they were two police officers just kind of going, oh, but can't you ring your support worker? Can't you do that? Oh, it went on a long time. And I've only recently read their statement around that, and their statement doesn't mention me being autistic, and it doesn't mention me saying that. And it says things like, we asked her if she had insurance, and there was a long pause, and then she said no. That is factually inaccurate in all ways. And it was at that point I had been like, I'm not going to fight this because I am actually guilty. Let's just, I don't even want to give a plea of mitigation. It's all too stressful until I saw the factually incorrect sentences, actually, because all of it was inaccurate. And I was like, I will fight this on the streets, on the beaches, because this is an issue of truth. This is about all autistic people who deal with the police, and I will battle this. And I really had very strong fantasies then of tracking down the individual police officers and going to talk to them. And then I thought, I don't think that's going to go very well, actually. And then, to cut a long story short, my admin assistant was like, anyway, don't think we can appeal this. Let's just crack on. So we're not going to
It
that
is.
battle.
That I struggle with that as well because obviously I think on a different level I end up with a lot of paperwork about my children, and I sit and I read things and I'm like, that's not what you said. And that isn't a bad remembering of a situation. I'm like, that is literally not what you said. And it triggers me. And historically, because bear in mind, I'm quite long in the tooth in this thing now, um, that used to send me off, like just like throwing spoons out of a window, like just all my spoons at it. Because it would trigger that sort of like sense of right and wrong and truth and justice. But at the same time, that was incredibly unhealthy for me, because I have spoons needed elsewhere. But it's still, I sat and read a document the other week and I was like, that's not how that went down. And it's a court document. It's not like, just a letter, it's a tribunal document. And I was like reading it, and there's three things that are just inherently untrue in it. And it Yeah, obviously it's like an itch in the back of my brain, but at the same time, I haven't went on a tangent to do loads of admin time on spoons where I'm like, this email proves that, this email proves that, this phone call happened at 3 p.m. on the 12th of the 12th, where we had a discussion about this, which historically actually I have done. Um, but it's very, very spoon heavy and it doesn't lead anywhere healthy.
Well, that then, this sounds like you have really learned a very hard won but wise lesson about picking your battles. And you've done this on the basis of recognizing that there are some battles that you have to fight and you need to save your spoons for them and for living. So you've really, ooh, yeah. And actually, I bet that's a good lesson for a lot of us to learn.
And I'm presented with so many opportunities to learn.
Right.
So
Well,
many.
as we would say in Buddhist practice, oh, thank you, lovely abusive or angry or hateful person. Thank you for helping me deepen my practice, improve my karma, and just really get in there with Dharma. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to make a little offering to you. In fact, it was so helpful that you did that. Actually, I forgot to do that to the police officers. I forgot to practice my Buddhist patient acceptance.
Just made a voodoo doll.
Well, anyway, yeah. Are other people then? Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the question in my head is just why? I'm like a 5-year-old. Why do people lie? But it almost is that. Like, why? Why would they not say the accurate thing? And why is this so frequent? When you got the chance to say an accurate thing, why not say the accurate thing?
I agree. I don't have answers. I don't have answers for that. It bothers me. It bothers me a lot. It bothers me a huge amount. To the point where if I felt like somebody had lied to me, I'm quite a big I can't continue that relationship. Obviously some relationships like, with people that you can't get rid of, I'm stuck in. But I have that sort of thing where I'm like, ooh, lie. Therefore, everything could be a lie. Therefore, not safe.
Yes.
Therefore.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
really is, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that sort of black and white.
Well, yeah.
Not to fall into a stereotype, but it is.
No. Same. I know many of us who feel a similar way. I mean, I went out with someone once, and I had this naive belief of he's autistic, therefore he will not lie. And I sort of believed that until about 18 months into the relationship, where I caught him in a lie, but it wasn't one directly to. Actually, it was. Basically, he'd lied about wearing a mask in the COVID times in a certain situation where he was sitting in a car with someone with COVID, and I was like, oh, that was that was a lie. Oh my God, what else was a lie? And it turned out he'd slept with his ex. Other stuff was definitely a lie. The scales fell from my eyes. He did attempt to be in that relationship for quite a while longer. But that, which in itself was a battle around those very grand emotions. It was like, but you must forgive autistic people for everything. Also, he lied. Yeah, it's a lot. Oh, like in a
It is
way.
a lot.
Yeah, maybe these did we said that it shouldn't be in the diagnostic criteria, but it does appear that in a society where people lie, it's almost a bit of a burden, really, isn't it? Well, no, it's not a burden when you look at inspirational figures like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Marion Budd, who will just stand up and tell the truth in front of everybody.
Maybe that's the thing, though. Maybe that's, and I'm definitely not going to frame it within a deficit, but we often make our life harder when it's already hard because we are willing to do that and do that. And maybe that does set us aside from other people in society. In the, if you're looking for differences in neurotype, maybe other people just sort of think it'll be fine.
Mm,
Keep quiet, carry on.
mm.
Or they're sort of, I don't know. they're sort of fine with doing it. I
That
can't I can't think of the last time I other than, really obvious things like that you lied to children about. Other than
sometimes,
that,
yeah.
yes. I I can't think of the last time I've no idea. Like the last time I lied about something. I wouldn't be able to maybe because I couldn't keep track of it. Like, don't you need to keep track of lies?
I think it does require quite good executive function, actually. Although, again, a lot of criminals are not, ironically, oh, I'm saying criminals, I mean, ones who are maybe a career criminal rather than just someone convicted of a crime. But I might, in fact, lie often and not necessarily be that good at it, actually.
I
It's
suppose if you're a criminal, you've been caught.
oh, good point. Yes, good point. By definition, something has gone
By,
wrong.
by definition, somebody caught it.
Yes. Do you know, I think a good, so Quakers, I love my Quaker meetings. And one of the reasons I love Quaker meetings is um, truth is a very high value in Quaker world, like very high. It's a grand emotion. And I think since the Quakers began to exist in the 17th century, they were able to form a kind of solidarity around these grand values. So, they held up equality for women as a thing in the 17th century when that was just inherently elsewhere not seen as valid. But what they had, crucially, and what they've in fact had for several centuries ongoingly as a group is support, solidarity amongst each other. So it's almost like we will be a group and we'll uphold these very grand emotions that are quite hard to uphold generally. Um, and but we'll do it together. And I know theoretically, kind of more organised religions do that too, but I think it all gets a bit more confused and scattered. With Quakers, it's like some people in a room and some of them speak, and somehow this unstructured structure has kept on going. And I think it's because it's a particular example of solidarity around very grand emotions, basically.
Maybe it's not just a neurodivergent thing.
But no, I think Quakers are neurodivergent.
Oh, just all the
Oh
Quakers.
no.
Just taking all the Quakers.
Yeah, yeah, but yeah, no, but I did, yes, did write an article for Friends Journal in America where they did a special issue on neurodiversity, and I was like, I'm not saying that the early Quakers were autistic. They just had some of the characteristics of autistic people, like all the characteristics, and then and then found each other all together and managed to stick together for centuries. I mean, it's not quite as simple as that, but actually there is something about. And so there are other examples, aren't there, of groups who find that their way of being is driven by some of these very grand emotions, and then they can support each other in it.
I mean, you could realistically say the neurodiversity movement's based on sort of ideas around fairness and systemic issues and truth and mercy and an idea of fairness. And yeah, it's officially, it's an advocacy movement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meant at its core.
Any civil rights movement is driven around that, isn't it? Really, these principles that are bigger than ourselves.
I think I would rather in the main be this way though. I think sometimes it has been to my detriment, but at the same time I don't think I would choose not to care as much as I do.
Well, exactly. And much as I might attempt to do the nuance thing, I'm thinking, yeah, of course it's right to be this way because he's right.
Right.
Because- oh, that's. I just heard Peter Capaldi's doctor in Doctor Who saying that must do what's right because it's decent and above all, it's kind, just kind. And then he advises people to never ever eat pears as well, because you can always do the little things as well as the very grand emotions.
Thanks for tuning in to Neurotypicals Don't Juggle Chainsaws. We're so glad you joined us today to explore the fascinating world of neurodivergence with your hosts, me, Nick King.
And me, Kate Fox. If our conversation sparked a thought, a question, or even a smile, don't keep it to yourself. Drop us a line at hello@neurotypicals.jugglechainsaws.co.uk or visit our website neurotypicals.jugglechainsaws.co.uk to write in. We'd love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, consider leaving us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast platform.
Until next time, keep embracing the unique ways you juggle the chainsaws of life.